So I couldn't agree more. But what would you say is you catch trends? It's absolutely phenomenal. You did it with Caboodle, you're doing it with Poshmark, you're able to identify trends in a way that is very unique. People always said to be able to kind of grow a community around their own style and their fashion, it's not going to happen. They need to try on something, or it needs to be unique. They can't just, pull it out of the air. You're going to have to walk in a store, and that's not the case anymore. And I want to know how you're able to do that. It's really amazing.
I think really when you look at technology and sort of how it's transformed over the last 15 years in particular, first was just the advent of the internet, right? And that created mass connection between people. But then around 2004, which is when Flickr, Delicious, for all of those who remember what Flickr and Delicious was, and then there was this little company called MySpace, which was zooming, and then there was this tiny little company called Facebook, which I remember in 2004 I couldn't get into because I didn't go to Harvard. So it was just a very hard platform. So we ended up actually starting out as a collaboration platform and pivoting in the direction of social. And I remember the exact moment that happened. Kieran and I and our third co-founder had met this guy who was flying in from Utah to come interview with us as our head of marketing. And he walks in, he doesn't go hi, hello, he goes, guys, I have one question to ask you. And we're like, okay. So at 8 o'clock, we're all like ready to meet this guy who's flying in from Utah, big executive, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, well, your list, in Caboodle we had this list, and they were, by default, we had created them, or at least thought that we would keep them private so you can be collaborative around them. He said, if you don't keep your list public by default, I should just catch the next flight back to Utah. That was his first sentence, and I clearly remember. And that was a pivotal point where we went from a collaborative platform to a social platform. And this guy had amazing intuition around things. And he was thinking social even though he couldn't articulate it. He could understand the fact that if he kept everything private, there would be no way for people to discover and communicate. And 5 months, or sort of 8 months into Caboodle, he actually said that really what social should be is about the usable exhaust of what everyone else is doing. So he convinced me, he worked with me to create a basic social feed, which was part of the early days of Caboodle. And 2 months later is when Newsfeed came out from Facebook, which became very controversial. So I think some of it is just a sign of times. I remember when we started Caboodle, we had to convince the world what was social shopping. 12 months later, there were 72 companies doing the same thing as Caboodle was. 72, not 1, 2. 72. I remember when I was pitching Poshmark in December of 2010, January 2011 to the investor, they were like asking, is youth fashion something that is relevant? Does it kind of make sense? And phone really just is never going to work. It should all be on the web. And today, I was just counting, there's been in the last year, $35 million of venture capital has gone to fund close to 18 companies that are trying to build fashion marketplaces in the same space as we are. So a lot of it is just, I think, the gestalt of the things that are happening at the same time.
And I think there's something about being a first mover, but it can work against you. You named a lot of companies there that MySpace, they were successful, and then Facebook just clobbered them. And that was kind of out of Friendster, was hot, and they were the first mover, and then they just kind of, they lost track of the vision of that trend, of that future, and adapting for your users. What do you do when all of a sudden you realize that your users or that your customers, that your community is asking for something different? What is unique about the way, how do you listen to them? There's a lot of noise out there, and people will tell you all day long they don't love your product, or that they are in love with your product. How do you know which ones are right and who to listen to?
I think the biggest lesson I've learned is to keep it simple. So I think a lot of times, if something introduces complexity in your experience, you can't do it. Right? And we make that mistake several times over in Caboodle. We introduce things based on feedback, and over time the platform got so complicated that somebody who'd been in the community for 2 years could use it, but a new user onboarding them was very, very difficult. So in fact, keeping things really, really simple, if you look at the best products in the world, they're just simple. There's a few interaction points. They just keep spinning around that. Google, one button, right? Facebook is a little more complicated. If you look at Instagram, like, comment, Pinterest, like, comment, repin. So very, very, very simple interaction models.